Best friend's poison caused my miscarriage. Husband divorced me. 2 years later, she watched my wedding from prison. The police officer's voice cut through the marble-floored penthouse like a blade. Vanessa Hartford, you're under arrest for attempted murder and assault causing bodily harm. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, cold metal against skin that had never known consequence. Vanessa's face twisted from shock to rage in seconds, her perfectly applied makeup cracking along with her composure. Eric, tell them this is crazy. Her voice rose to a shriek, desperate and sharp. Tell them. Eric Reed stood 3 feet away from the woman he'd been sleeping with for months. The woman pregnant with his child, and his voice came out dead and hollow. I know what you did, Vanessa. I know about the poison, the tea, the vitamins, all of it. Her face went white, then red, then something inhuman. You can't prove anything. Bank records. Eric's hands shook as he spoke. Security footage. Lab results. Text messages. We can prove everything. And that's when the mask shattered completely. That's when 13 years of hidden envy and calculated evil finally exploded into the open. She had everything. The scream echoed through the penthouse, bouncing off marble counters and floor-to-ceiling windows. Raw and primal, and full of a poisonous rage that had been growing for over a decade. Vanessa fought against the officers holding her, wild with fury and something that looked like madness. The perfect husband, the money, the penthouse, the life. She didn't deserve it. Vanessa's voice cracked with tears and rage. I was smarter. I was prettier. I worked harder. Why did she get you? Why did perfect little Claire with her sweet smile and her kind heart get everything when I got nothing? Eric stepped back, horror written across his face. He was looking at a stranger, a monster wearing the face of someone he thought he knew. I loved you first. Vanessa was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. Since high school. Before her. But you only saw her. Perfect Claire, who had everything handed to her while I had to fight for scraps. You poisoned her. Eric's whisper cut through her rant. You killed our baby. Vanessa's laugh was sharp and broken. That baby was mine to have, not hers. Mine. She got the husband and the penthouse and the perfect life, and I had to earn it. Had to scheme. Had to make her weak so you'd finally see me. The officers began dragging her toward the door. She fought every step, still screaming. I earned this. I took what should have been mine. And I'd do it again. She deserved to lose everything. She deserved to suffer. Her voice echoed down the hallway even as the elevator doors began to close. Not one word of remorse, not one hint of guilt or regret, only rage that she'd been caught, only bitterness that she'd lost. And Eric stood alone in the doorway of his penthouse, the same penthouse where he'd served his wife divorce papers 8 weeks earlier, and realized he'd welcomed a murderer into his life, into his bed, into his future. Now, family, I need you to understand something before we go any further. This isn't just a story about a divorce. This isn't just a story about betrayal, though betrayal happened in the cruelest way possible. This is a story about poison. Not just the kind you drink, but the kind that wears a best friend's face. The kind that braids your hair and holds your hand and destroys you so slowly. You don't even realize you're dying until you've already lost everything. This is a story about a woman who was poisoned, literally poisoned, by someone she loved, and about the man who loved her silently while she belonged to someone else, and about grace that doesn't seek revenge but builds something so beautiful that betrayal becomes irrelevant. If you believe that truth always comes to light, hit that like button right now. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Or just type, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because what happens next is going to show you that consequences are real. That poison, whether literal or figurative, eventually destroys the one who wields it. And that sometimes losing everything is the beginning of finding yourself. So settle in, family. Get comfortable. This is going to hurt before it heals, but I promise you, it heals. Welcome to Mr. Hearthline Stories. May the Almighty protect you from those who smile while mixing poison into your tea. May your discernment be sharper than any deception. May you recognize the difference between those who love you and those who envy you, and may you find the strength to rise when betrayal tries to bury you. Now, let me take you back. Back before the arrest, back before the divorce papers, back before Vanessa's lies convinced a husband to abandon his wife, back to when Claire Morrison Reed thought she had everything, when she had no idea that the woman bringing her tea every Thursday was slowly killing her. Let me show you how it all began. 6 months before Vanessa's arrest, Claire Morrison Reed was living what looked like a fairy tale. She was 28 years old, with a life that belonged on magazine covers. A penthouse overlooking the city, all glass and light and space that seemed to stretch forever. A husband who'd built a tech empire from nothing, turning code and vision into billions. Designer clothes hanging in a closet the size of most people's bedrooms. Art on the walls that cost more than cars. A life that looked perfect from the outside. But if you looked closer, if you really paid attention, you'd see that Claire wasn't like the other billionaire wives. She didn't lunch with socialites or post carefully curated photos of her luxury lifestyle. Instead, she spent her days volunteering with a children's literacy nonprofit, reading to kids in underfunded schools, planning fundraisers that actually changed lives. She remembered the names of the doormen in her building and the baristas at her coffee shop. She smiled at strangers and meant it. Claire had married Eric Reed 3 years earlier in a wedding that made the society pages. It had been beautiful in that expensive, impersonal way that high society weddings often are. But Claire had insisted on writing her own vows, had insisted on inviting the elderly woman who'd been her neighbor growing up, had worn her grandmother's bracelet along with the diamond jewelry Eric's mother had provided. Even then, she'd been trying to hold on to herself while entering a world that wanted to remake her into something glossy and perfect and empty. The pregnancy had been a surprise, a beautiful, miraculous surprise that felt like the missing piece of a puzzle Claire hadn't realized was incomplete. She'd been in the bathroom of their penthouse on a Tuesday morning when she'd taken the test. Then she'd taken 2 more because she couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe something this good was actually happening. She'd stood there with tears streaming down her face and joy exploding in her chest. 3 positive tests lined up on the marble counter and felt her whole world shift into focus. This was what she'd been waiting for. This was the family she'd always wanted. This was everything. When she told Eric that evening, he'd been working in his home office, typing emails, on his laptop with that focused intensity he brought to everything business-related. Claire, I'm in the middle of something. Can it wait? No. Her voice had been soft, but certain. It can't wait. He'd looked up then, really looked at her, and something in her expression made him close the laptop immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She'd crossed to him, taken his hands, felt hers trembling in his grip. Everything's right. Eric, we're having a baby. The change in his face had been instantaneous. Shock, then joy, then wonder washing over his features like sunrise. What? Are you sure? 3 tests, sure. He'd stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. He'd lifted her off her feet, gentle despite his excitement, and spun her, in a slow circle before setting her down and pressing his forehead to hers. We're having a baby. We're really having a baby. It had been the happiest moment of Claire's life. Standing there in Eric's arms, feeling wanted and loved and like they were building something that mattered, like they were becoming a family, like everything was finally, perfectly right. That night, they'd lain in bed talking about names and nursery colors, and whether the baby would have Claire's eyes or Eric's smile. They'd talked about teaching their child to read and to be kind and to change the world. They'd built castles in the air made of love and hope and plans for a future that felt solid and real. The first person Claire called the next morning was Vanessa Hartford. Vanessa had been Claire's best friend since they were 15 years old. They'd met in high school, 2 girls who didn't quite fit with the popular crowd, but found each other and decided that was enough. Vanessa had been the bold one, the one who spoke her mind and took risks and pulled Claire out of her shell. Claire had been the steady one, the listener, the friend who showed up at 2. In the morning, when Vanessa's heart got broken or her family let her down, they'd been inseparable through high school and college. had rented their first apartment together after graduation, had navigated their 20s side by side, celebrating promotions and surviving breakups, and becoming the kind of friends who felt more like sisters. When Claire's father died suddenly of a heart attack during her senior year of college, Vanessa had held her while she sobbed, had helped her plan the funeral, had stayed up with her through those horrible first nights when grief felt like drowning. When Claire met Eric at a charity gala 2 years later, Vanessa had been the one they'd called after their first date, breathless and giddy and already half in love. And when Eric proposed on a beach in Malibu at sunset, Vanessa had been her maid of honor, wearing the champagne-colored dress Claire had chosen, and giving a toast at the reception that made everyone laugh and cry. Vanessa was family, not by blood, but by choice, by 13 years of history and trust and love that felt unbreakable. So of course Claire called her the morning after telling Eric about the baby. "Oh my God, Claire!" Vanessa's squeal of joy through the phone had sounded so genuine. "I'm so happy for you. This is everything you've wanted, everything you deserve. I can't believe it's real." Claire had been smiling so wide her face hurt. "I'm going to be a mom, and I'm going to be the best aunt. I'm coming over right now. We're celebrating." Vanessa had arrived an hour later with sparkling cider and non-alcoholic champagne, and a hug that felt real. They'd sat in Claire's enormous living room, with the city spread out below them like a glittering promise, and they'd talked about baby showers and tiny clothes, and how Claire's life was about to change in the most beautiful way. "I'm going to be the best aunt," Vanessa had repeated, her hand on Claire's still flat stomach. "This baby is going to be so loved." Claire had believed her. Because when you love someone, when you've been friends since you were 15 years old, when someone has been there through everything, first heartbreaks and college stress and family deaths and wedding planning, you don't suspect them of evil. You trust them. And trust, family, is what makes betrayal possible. 2 weeks after Claire announced her pregnancy, Vanessa showed up at the penthouse with a gift. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Claire had been feeling the first waves of mourning. Sickness, nauseous, and exhausted in a way that made everything feel slightly unreal. "I brought you something." Vanessa had pulled a beautiful tin from her designer bag, holding it out with a smile. The tin was gorgeous, hand-painted with intricate Moroccan designs in deep blues and golds, the kind of thing that looked expensive and thoughtful and chosen with care. "What is it?" Claire had taken the tin, feeling the weight of it in her hands. "Chamomile tea blend from my trip to Morocco last month." Vanessa's smile had been warm and genuine, or at least it had looked that way. "It'll help with the morning sickness and stress. All natural, completely safe for pregnancy. My friend who owns a tea shop there swore by it when she was pregnant." Claire had been touched. The trip to Morocco had been 3 weeks earlier, which meant Vanessa had been thinking about her, planning this gift. "You didn't have to do that. That's what sisters do." Vanessa had hugged her, squeezing tight. "We take care of each other. Make sure you drink it every day, okay? It'll help. I promise." That evening, Claire had made her first cup. The tea had a pleasant, slightly sweet smell, floral with hints of something earthy underneath. She'd drunk it while reading baby books, feeling grateful for a friend who cared enough to bring her something to help with the nausea. She'd had no idea she was drinking poison. The symptoms started slowly, so slowly that at first it just seemed like a difficult pregnancy. Morning sickness that lasted all day, fatigue that made it hard to get out of bed, headaches that pounded behind her eyes like drums. "It's normal," her doctor had assured her during her 8-week checkup. "Some women have harder pregnancies than others." "Are you staying hydrated?" "Trying to." Claire had felt exhausted even sitting in the exam chair. "I'm drinking a lot of tea. Chamomile. A friend brought it for me." "That's fine. Natural remedies can help. Just make sure you're eating when you can and resting as much as possible. Call me if anything gets worse." But it did get worse. By week 3 of drinking the tea, Claire's hair started falling out. Not all at once, but in clumps that she'd find on her pillow in the morning or circling the shower drain. She'd run her fingers through her hair and come away with strands wrapped around her fingers, more and more each day. The nausea intensified. She couldn't keep food down. She'd eat a few bites of toast and spend the next hour in the bathroom, retching until there was nothing left. She was losing weight when she should have been gaining it. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. Her face looked gaunt in the mirror. Eric had noticed. "Baby, I'm worried about you." He'd found her one morning sitting on the bathroom floor, too weak to stand, hair falling around her shoulders in lifeless strands. "Maybe you should stop volunteering so much. The stress isn't good for you or the baby." "I'm fine." The lie had tasted bitter. "I just need to rest." But rest didn't help, because every day, Claire drank the tea Vanessa had brought her. Every day, she was ingesting more poison into her system. And every day, she got weaker. Vanessa came by every Thursday for what she called their girls' brunch. She'd bring pastries from Claire's favorite bakery and fresh fruit, and sympathy that looked completely real. "You look exhausted, honey. Are you sleeping?" Not really. Claire had barely been able to eat, pushing food around on her plate while Vanessa watched. "The nausea is constant." "I'm so sorry." Vanessa's concern had seemed genuine. "Are you still drinking the tea I brought?" "Every day. It's one of the few things I can keep down." "Good. That's good." Vanessa had squeezed her hand. "Keep drinking it. It'll help your body adjust. These things take time." And then Vanessa had brought more gifts. "Special prenatal vitamins," she'd said, pulling bottles from her bag. "My naturopath recommended them. Much better than the synthetic ones doctors prescribe. All natural, perfectly safe." Claire had taken them gratefully, had swallowed the capsules every morning along with her tea, had trusted completely, had been poisoning herself with arsenic hidden in gifts that looked like love. But Vanessa wasn't just poisoning Claire's body. She was poisoning Eric's mind, too. It was subtle at first. Little comments dropped casually during conversations, seeds of doubt planted so carefully that Eric didn't even realize they were growing. Vanessa had started showing up at Eric's office. "Just checking in," she'd say, with that perfect smile. "Claire's been so tired lately. I wanted to make sure you're both okay." "We're fine. Just pregnancy stuff. She seems really stressed." "Is everything okay with you two?" "Of course." "Why would you ask that?" Vanessa would shrug. "Perfectly innocent. No reason. She just seems distant sometimes, like something's on her mind." The seed was planted. Eric would go home that night and look at Claire differently, wondering if she was distant, if something was wrong that she wasn't telling him. The doubt was tiny, barely there, but it was there. A week later, another seed. "I saw Claire having coffee with some guy from the nonprofit yesterday. Tall, dark hair. They seemed pretty intense. Probably nothing, but I thought you should know." Eric had asked Claire about it that night, casual, but watching her reaction. "How's the fundraiser planning going?" "Good. We're ahead of schedule." "Anyone new on the committee?" "A few people." "Why?" "Just curious." But the doubt grew a little bigger. Who was the guy Vanessa had mentioned? Why hadn't Claire brought him up? Was she hiding something? Vanessa was patient. She'd spent 13 years studying Claire, learning her life, getting close enough to destroy her from the inside. She knew exactly how to plant doubt in Eric's mind without seeming like she was doing anything wrong. She was just a concerned friend, just someone who cared about both of them, just someone trying to help. Every Thursday, Vanessa brought Claire tea and sympathy. Every Friday, she'd stop by Eric's office with coffee and casual concern. Slowly, deliberately, she poisoned them both. And then, 12 weeks into the pregnancy, Claire miscarried. It happened at 2 a.m, on a Tuesday. Claire woke to cramping, sharp and intense, low in her abdomen. She'd felt it before. This kind of pain. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. "Eric." Her voice had been small in the darkness. "Eric, wake up." He'd jolted awake immediately, seeing her face in the dim light from the window. "What's wrong?" "Something's wrong with the baby." And then she'd felt it. The warmth between her legs. The wetness. She'd pulled back the covers with shaking hands and seen the blood. The scream that tore from her throat was animal, primal, the sound of a mother losing her child. Eric had called 911 while Claire sobbed. The ambulance had arrived in minutes. The paramedics had been kind and professional, asking questions Claire could barely answer through her tears. "How far along are you? When did the bleeding start? Are you in pain?" Everything was pain. The cramping in her body, the terror in her heart, the desperate, frantic prayers running through her mind. Please, God, please let my baby live. Please don't take this from me. Please. The emergency room had been too bright, too white, too cold. Claire had lain on the exam table while a doctor performed an ultrasound. The screen turned away from her, the silence stretching too long. I'm sorry, Mrs. Reed. The doctor's voice had been gentle but final. There's no heartbeat. Your body is rejecting the pregnancy. No. The word had come out broken. No. Check again. Please check again. I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. We'll need to do a procedure to complete the miscarriage, but the pregnancy is no longer viable. Claire had felt her world end, felt every hope and dream and plan for the future shatter like glass. She'd pressed her hands to her still swollen belly and sobbed for the baby she'd already loved so much. The baby she'd been talking to at night, telling stories and singing lullabies. The baby she'd imagined teaching to read and to be kind and to change the world. Gone. All of it gone. Eric had held her while she fell apart, had cried with her, his own tears falling into her hair, had whispered that they'd try again, that this wasn't the end, that they'd get through this together. But something had broken between them in that hospital room. Some thread of connection that had been fraying for weeks finally snapped. Claire was drowning in grief, and Eric was drowning in helplessness and the seeds of doubt that Vanessa had planted. The hospital had kept Claire overnight for observation. In the morning, still foggy from sedation and grief, Claire had woken to find Vanessa sitting beside her bed. Oh, Claire. Vanessa's eyes had been filled with tears. I'm so sorry. This is devastating. She'd hugged Claire while Claire cried, had stayed at the hospital until Claire was discharged that afternoon, had driven Claire and Eric home and helped Claire into bed and brought soup that Claire couldn't eat, had continued bringing the tea. This blend is especially good for healing, Vanessa had said softly, making Claire a cup in the penthouse kitchen while Eric took a work call in his office. It'll help your body recover. You need to take care of yourself. Claire had drunk it because she trusted her best friend, because she had no idea that the chamomile tea in the beautiful Moroccan tin had killed her baby, that the arsenic Vanessa had been feeding her for weeks had poisoned her system enough to cause the miscarriage, that every sip was more poison destroying her from the inside out, that every gift, every gesture of love, every moment of friendship had been a lie covering murder. Family, I need to pause here, because I know some of you are wondering how. How could someone be that evil? How could a best friend, someone you'd known for over a decade, do something so monstrous? And here's what I need you to understand. Envy is a poison more dangerous than arsenic. Jealousy is a cancer that grows in the dark spaces of the heart. When someone decides that your happiness is their suffering, when they believe they deserve what you have, when they've spent years comparing their life to yours and finding themselves wanting, they become capable of anything. Vanessa hadn't woken up one day and decided to kill Claire's baby. She'd spent years watching Claire's life and hating her for it. Years believing that she was prettier, smarter, more deserving. Years wondering why Claire got the love and the marriage and the happiness while Vanessa got nothing that satisfied her. The pregnancy had been the final straw, because if Claire had a baby, the perfect husband, the perfect life, and the perfect family, what did that leave for Vanessa? What did Claire not have that Vanessa could still claim? So she'd decided to take it, all of it, and she'd done it with a smile. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt that knife of betrayal from someone close to you, comment right now. Tell me your story, because you're not alone, family. Betrayal by strangers hurts. Betrayal by those we love destroys. But keep watching, because destruction isn't the end of this story. 2 weeks after the miscarriage, Vanessa made her next move. She seduced Eric. It wasn't difficult. Eric was grieving, vulnerable, feeling helpless because he couldn't fix his wife's pain. Claire had retreated into herself, barely speaking, barely eating, barely existing. The light had gone out of her eyes, and Eric didn't know how to bring it back. He'd been working late at the office one Thursday night, buried in code and contracts and anything that would distract him from the heavy grief that had settled over his home. His marriage had become a house of mourning, and he didn't know how to live in it. There was a knock on his office door around 8 p.m. He'd looked up to see Vanessa standing there with takeout bags and that sympathetic smile. "I knew you weren't taking care of yourself." Her voice had been soft, concerned. "Thought I'd bring dinner. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." She'd come in, close the door behind her, set the food out on his desk. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." The lie had been automatic. "Eric." She'd looked at him with those understanding eyes. "You don't have to pretend with me. I know this is hard." And something in him had cracked. "I don't know how to help her. Claire won't talk to me, won't let me in. I feel like I'm losing her. You're doing everything you can." Vanessa had moved closer, put her hand on his arm. "Sometimes terrible things just happen. It's not your fault." That touch had lingered, her hand warm on his arm, her perfume subtle and different from the heavy grief that clung to everything at home. She'd been standing close enough that he could see the sympathy in her eyes, the understanding, the offer of comfort that felt different from the pain waiting for him at the penthouse. "Claire's lucky to have you. I don't feel lucky. I feel like I'm failing her." "You're not." Vanessa's hand had moved to his shoulder. "You're grieving too. You lost a baby too. You're allowed to need support." And then she'd leaned in, just slightly, just enough that Eric could have pulled back if he'd wanted to, could have stopped what was about to happen, but he didn't. Vanessa had kissed him, soft at first, then deeper when he didn't pull away, and Eric, weak and grieving and human, had kissed her back. It had started as comfort, a moment of weakness, a escape from the pain that was drowning his marriage. But within 2 weeks, it had become a full affair. They'd meet at hotels during lunch breaks, at Vanessa's apartment in the evenings when Claire thought Eric was working late. Once, when Claire was visiting her mother for the weekend, they'd slept together in the penthouse. In the bed Eric shared with his wife. Vanessa would bring poison tea to Claire on Thursday and sleep with Claire's husband on Friday, would hug her best friend while she grieved, and then steal her husband while she was still broken, would smile and sympathize and destroy with the same mouth. And through it all, she'd been planting more seeds in Eric's mind. They were lying in bed at a hotel one afternoon, 3 weeks into the affair, when Vanessa had rolled over and looked at Eric with troubled eyes. "What's wrong?" Eric had asked. "I need to tell you something. I hate to say this, but I don't think I can keep quiet anymore." "What are you talking about?" "The baby. Claire's baby." Vanessa had let her voice break slightly, like she was forcing herself to speak a difficult truth. "Eric, I don't think it was yours." "What? That's insane. I saw her with someone, more than once." Vanessa's eyes had filled with tears. "I didn't want to believe it, but the timing, the way she was acting before the miscarriage, distant and secretive. And Claire would never cheat on me." Eric's voice had been certain, but the seed of doubt was already there, already taking root. "I know. I don't want to believe it either. She's my best friend." Vanessa had wiped at her eyes. "But I also can't lie to you. Not when you deserve to know the truth. I've seen her with a man from that non-profit, more than once. Coffee dates that went too long. The way they looked at each other. You're wrong. You have to be wrong. I hope I am." Vanessa had pressed close to him. "I really hope I am. But Eric, think about it. Think about how she's been acting." And Eric had thought about it, had remembered Claire having coffee with committee members, had remembered her being vague about her schedule, had remembered Vanessa mentioning seeing her with some guy weeks earlier. Doubt grew, watered with more evidence that Vanessa carefully fabricated. Text messages she claimed to have seen on Claire's phone, sightings of Claire with a dark-haired man that may or may not have happened, little lies that built into a big picture of betrayal. By the time Vanessa was ready for her final move, Eric had already started believing that Claire had cheated on him, that the miscarriage was maybe a blessing because the baby hadn't been his anyway, that his perfect wife was a liar, and that Vanessa, beautiful and honest Vanessa, was the one telling him the truth. So when Vanessa confessed the affair, when she showed up at his office 6 weeks after the miscarriage, with tears in her eyes and guilt on her face, Eric had believed everything she said. "I'm so sorry, Eric. I tried to resist." but we fell in love, and I can't lie anymore." Vanessa had been crying, her voice breaking beautifully. "Claire was cheating on you. We both know the baby wasn't yours. You deserve better than her lies. You deserve someone who actually loves you." Eric had pulled her into his arms, had kissed her and believed her, and decided that his marriage was built on lies. Had confronted Claire with divorce papers a week later. And Claire, still weak from the poison in her system, still grieving her lost baby, still drinking the tea her best friend brought her every Thursday, had signed the papers and walked away from the only home she'd known. Now, you might be asking yourself, where was Carter Hayes during all of this? Who was he, and why does his name matter to this story? Family, I'm going to tell you about the man who loved Claire Morrison from the moment he met her, the man who watched her marry his business partner and never said a word, the man who stood in the shadows for 3 years, loving her silently, waiting for nothing, expecting nothing, just existing in orbit around a woman he knew he could never have, until the day she lost everything. And then Carter Hayes made a choice. Carter had been Eric's business partner for 5 years before Claire entered the picture. They'd built Hayes Reed Technologies together, Carter handling operations and development, Eric handling vision and sales. They were a good team, not friends exactly, but colleagues who respected each other's strengths and tolerated each other's weaknesses. Carter was quiet where Eric was loud, thoughtful where Eric was impulsive. He lived modestly despite his wealth, drove a Honda Accord when he could have afforded a fleet of sports cars, wore jeans and simple shirts instead of designer suits. He existed in the background while Eric took center stage, and that was exactly how Carter preferred it. Money had never been the point for Carter. The work was the point, building something that mattered, creating technology that helped people, making a difference that lasted beyond quarterly earnings reports. And then Eric had brought Claire to a company dinner, and Carter's entire world had shifted on its axis. It had been a charity gala, black tie and expensive, raising money for children's literacy programs. Carter had been planning to stay for an hour, make an appearance, write a check, and leave. He'd never been comfortable at these events, with their performative philanthropy and social climbing masked as generosity. But then Eric had walked in with a woman on his arm. She'd been wearing a simple blue dress, elegant without being flashy, and she'd looked nervous in a way that was refreshing among a room full of people performing confidence. "This is my wife, Claire." Eric had introduced her to the group with pride, like she was a trophy he'd won. Carter had shaken her hand and felt the world shift. "It's nice to meet you. You too." Claire's smile had been genuine, reaching her eyes in a way that most smiles at these events didn't. "The fundraiser tonight was your idea, wasn't it?" Carter had actually read the program, had seen her name in the acknowledgments for planning and coordinating the event. Claire's face had lit up with surprised pleasure. "You noticed that? It's a great cause. You should be proud. Most of these charity events are more about networking than actually helping people. But this one seems different. Real. That's exactly what I was trying to do." Claire had leaned in slightly, animated now. Make something that actually matters, instead of just being another excuse for people to show off their jewelry. Eric hadn't even known, hadn't read the program, hadn't bothered to learn that his wife had spent 6 months planning this event, coordinating with schools and publishers and donors to create something meaningful. But Carter had noticed, and in that moment, watching Claire's eyes light up when someone actually saw her work, he'd understood 2 things with perfect clarity. First, that Eric didn't deserve her. Second, that Carter was in serious trouble. Over the next 3 years, Carter had watched Claire at company events, had seen her bring warmth to every room she entered, had noticed how she remembered the catering staff's names and asked about their families, how she'd arrive early to help set up and stay late to help clean, how she'd talk to the awkward junior developers that everyone else ignored and make them feel valued and seen. He'd watched her volunteer with nonprofits, using Eric's money and connections but her own heart and time. Had seen her befriend everyone from the doorman in her building to the elderly woman who ran the flower shop on her corner. Had noticed her kindness, her intelligence, her talent for making people feel like they mattered. Had watched Eric take her for granted, cancel dates for meetings that weren't important, forget to ask about her day, take phone calls during dinners, and disappear for 20 minutes, coming back with apologies that sounded hollow. Show up late to events Claire had organized and leave early because he was bored. Carter had seen all of it, had said something once, casually, trying not to sound like he was overstepping. "Eric, be careful with Vanessa." Eric had looked up from his laptop, distracted. "What do you mean?" "I don't trust her, the way she looks at Claire. At you." "Something's off." Eric had laughed, actually laughed. "She's Claire's best friend from high school. She's harmless. I'm just saying, watch yourself. You're paranoid. Vanessa's been nothing but supportive. She's practically family." Carter had let it drop, because what could he say? That he was in love with Eric's wife and saw things through that lens? That he noticed how Vanessa's eyes would go cold when Claire wasn't looking? That he'd seen Vanessa touch Eric's arm too long, stand too close, laugh too hard at his jokes? None of that was appropriate. None of that was professional. So Carter had stayed quiet, had watched Claire shine at events and go home with a man who didn't appreciate her, had seen Vanessa circle like a shark and been unable to warn anyone, had loved silently and completely and without any hope of reciprocation, until the day Claire signed those divorce papers and walked out of Eric's penthouse with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. Carter had heard about the divorce through office gossip, had heard the accusations that Claire had cheated, that the baby hadn't been Eric's, that she'd been caught in lies and betrayal. The whispers had spread through the company like wildfire. Eric's wife had an affair. The baby wasn't his. She played him for a fool. Carter hadn't believed a word of it, because Carter knew Claire, had watched her for 3 years, had seen her character in small moments when she thought no one was looking, had noticed how she treated people when there was nothing to gain from kindness, had seen her genuine care for others, her integrity, her goodness. She wasn't capable of that kind of betrayal, which meant someone was lying. And Carter had a pretty good idea who. He'd done research, had hired a private investigator to find Claire's new address, not to stalk her but to make sure she was safe, had learned she was living in a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that made his heart ache, had seen her once at a grocery store, looking thin and exhausted, counting dollars before putting items back on the shelf. The woman who'd lived in a penthouse was now counting change for groceries. The woman who'd glowed with health and happiness was now pale and worn, dark circles under her eyes, moving like every step hurt. And Carter had made a decision. He couldn't have her. She'd never be his. She probably didn't even remember the handful of conversations they'd had at company events. But he could make sure she knew someone saw her worth. Someone believed in her. Someone cared whether she was okay. The first gift had been white peonies, her favorite flower. He'd remembered from a conversation 2 years earlier at a summer company party. She'd been admiring the flower arrangements, and she'd mentioned to someone that white peonies reminded her of her grandmother's garden, that they were her favorite. Carter had remembered, and now he had them delivered to her apartment with a simple card. "You deserve beauty in your life. You always have. No name, no pressure, no expectations, just truth." The gifts had continued. A book she'd mentioned loving in college. Carter had remembered the title from a conversation 18 months ago when someone had asked about favorite novels. A soft cashmere blanket in dove gray because her apartment was probably cold and she deserved comfort. Her favorite dark chocolate, the expensive kind from that boutique shop she'd mentioned once. A carefully curated playlist of songs he thought she'd like, left on a USB drive with a note. "This will pass. You will rise." Each gift came with a card. Simple messages. Someone sees you. Someone believes in you. You are stronger than you know. Carter had watched from a distance as Claire slowly began to heal, as the gifts seemed to give her something to hold on to, as she started leaving her apartment more, as some of the exhaustion seemed to lift from her shoulders. And he'd expected nothing in return, had wanted nothing except for her to know that she mattered, that someone in the world saw her value even when her husband and best friend had convinced her she had none. Until the day he'd shown up at her door with flowers in his hands and truth in his eyes. Until the day he'd decided that loving her in silence wasn't enough anymore, that she deserved to know someone had seen her all along. 8 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Carter Hayes stood in the hallway outside. Claire Morrison's studio apartment, holding white peonies and his heart in his hands. He'd been standing there for 5 minutes, trying to work up the courage to knock, trying to figure out what he was going to say. "Hi, I'm the guy who's been sending you gifts. I've been in love with you for 3 years. I know you're recovering from the worst betrayal of your life, and probably not interested in any man right now, but I wanted you to know that someone sees you." Yeah, that wasn't going to work. Carter had almost turned around 3 times, had almost decided this was a terrible idea, and he should just keep sending anonymous gifts and leave her alone. But something had kept him rooted to that spot, some certainty that she deserved to know the truth, that hiding his care behind anonymity was, in its own way, another kind of lie. So he'd knocked. 3 sharp raps on the door, and then he'd waited, heart pounding, flowers trembling slightly in his grip. The door had opened. Claire had been standing there in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled, back in a messy bun, no makeup, looking exhausted and beautiful and surprised. "Carter?" Her voice had been soft, confused. She knew who he was, recognized him from company events, but clearly had no idea why Eric's former business partner was standing at her door with flowers. "Hi." His voice had come out rougher than intended. "I'm sorry to just show up like this. Is everything okay? Is Eric?" "Eric's fine. This isn't about Eric." Carter had taken a breath, committed to the truth. "Claire, it's been me. The gifts, the flowers, all of it. It's been me." He'd watched, understanding dawn on her face, watched her eyes go wide. "It's been you? I hope that's okay." God, he'd sounded nervous, even to his own ears. I couldn't stand by and watch you suffer alone, and I wanted you to know that someone saw your worth, even if you couldn't see it yourself right now. How long have you?" She hadn't finished the question, but he'd known what she was asking. "Known you deserved better?" Carter's smile had been sad. "Since the day I met you. Since the charity gala 3 years ago when you lit up talking about the literacy program and Eric didn't even know you'd planned the whole event. Since I watched you remember the caterer's daughter's name and ask how her soccer game went. Since I saw you be kind when there was nothing to gain from it. I've known you deserved better than what you got. 3 years." She'd said it like she couldn't believe it. "You've loved me for 3 years." "Yes, and you never said anything. You weren't mine to say anything to. You were married. You loved your husband. I had no right to interfere." Carter had looked down at the flowers, then back at her eyes. "I don't want anything from you, Claire. I'm not here to pressure you or try to swoop in while you're vulnerable. I just wanted you to know that someone sees you. Someone believes in you. Someone thinks you're extraordinary." He'd started to hand her the flowers, started to turn away because staying felt like too much, like he was asking for something she couldn't give. "Wait." Her voice had stopped him. Would you like to come in? For coffee?" Carter's smile could have lit the entire city. "I'd love that." Family. This is where the story shifts, because up until now, this has been about loss, about betrayal and poison and grief. But here's where it becomes about building, about healing, about the difference between love that takes and love that gives. Carter didn't come into Claire's life demanding anything. He didn't try to fix her or save her or make her his. He just showed up, as a friend, as someone who believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. If you've ever had someone show up for you like that, with no agenda, no expectations, just genuine care, comment below and tell me about them, because those people are rare. Those people are sacred. That first cup of coffee had turned into 3 hours of conversation. They'd sat in Claire's tiny studio apartment, her on the second-hand couch she'd bought at a thrift store, him in the single armchair, and they'd talked about everything and nothing. Carter had asked about her life, really asked. "How are you doing?" Not the polite version you tell acquaintances, but the real answer. And Claire, maybe because he'd been sending her kindness for weeks, maybe because his eyes held genuine care, maybe because she was so tired of holding everything inside, had told him the truth. "I don't know who I am anymore. I thought I was Eric's wife. I thought I was going to be a mother. I thought Vanessa was my best friend. And all of it was a lie. So who am I? What's left when everything you thought was true turns out to be false? You're Claire Morrison. Carter's voice had been certain. You're the woman who spent 6 months planning a literacy fundraiser because you believed kids deserved access to books. You're the person who remembers names and asks follow-up questions and makes people feel valued. You're kind and smart and talented. That didn't change just because Eric was too blind to see it and Vanessa was too twisted to appreciate it. How do you know that? We barely know each other. I've been watching. Not in a creepy way. Carter had smiled slightly. But at company events, at fundraisers, I pay attention. And I saw you, Claire. The real you. Not the version Eric showed off, or the version Vanessa pretended to care about. The you who exists when you think no one important is watching. And that person? She's extraordinary. Claire had started crying then. Not sad tears, but something else. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or just the release of being seen after months of feeling invisible. Carter had sat with her while she cried. Hadn't tried to stop the tears or fix the pain. Had just been present. And when she'd finally stopped, he'd made her more coffee and asked if she wanted to talk or just sit in silence. Talk. Her voice had been hoarse. Please, I've been silent for too long. So, they'd talked. About the miscarriage and how she still felt the loss of the baby every day. About the divorce and how she'd signed the papers without even fighting because Eric's mind had been made up. About Vanessa and the friendship she was grieving. The girl who'd braided her hair before prom and held her hand through her father's funeral. Did any of it real? Claire had asked. 13 years of friendship. Was all of it a lie? I don't know. Carter had been honest. Maybe some of it was real at the beginning. Maybe she did care about you once. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing you as a friend and started seeing you as competition. And that poison, the kind that grows in your heart, it destroys everything it touches. That first visit had turned into regular visits. Carter had started coming by twice a week, then 3 times, then almost every day. Always with coffee or groceries or just company. Always respecting boundaries, never pushing for more than friendship, never making Claire feel pressured or obligated. They'd talk for hours about everything. Books and movies and childhood memories and dreams for the future. Carter told her about growing up with parents who loved science more than their son, about building a company because he wanted to matter to someone. Claire told him about her father's death and how she'd never quite recovered from losing him, about wanting to do something creative, but being talked into safer choices. One night, 3 weeks after Carter had first shown up at her door, Claire had been processing her anger about the betrayal out loud. Was any of it real? Did Eric ever actually love me? Or was I just a trophy wife who made him look good? Carter had been quiet for a long moment. Then he'd been honest. I think he loved the version of you that made him look good. The beautiful wife who organized perfect events and made him seem more human and charitable. But I don't think he ever saw the real you. Because, if he had, he never would have let you go. Claire had looked at him then, really looked at him. Why are you doing this, Carter? Why are you here almost every day bringing me groceries and listening to me process my trauma? Because you deserve kindness. Because you deserve to be seen. Is that all? Carter had met her eyes. His answer had been slow in coming, careful. No, that's not all. What else? I'm in love with you, Claire. The words had come out quiet but certain. I have been since the day Eric introduced us. I watched you for 3 years and fell more in love every single day. I watched him take you for granted and wanted to scream. I watched him throw you away and wanted to destroy him. Claire's breath had caught. But I'm not telling you this to pressure you. Carter had continued quickly. I'm telling you because you asked, and I won't lie to you. I love you. I'll keep loving you, whether we're together or not. But I'm not going to push. I'm just going to be here for as long as you need, in whatever way you need. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. What if I never feel the same way? Claire's voice had been small. What if I'm too broken? What if I can never trust anyone again? Then, I'll still consider knowing you a privilege. Carter's eyes had held nothing but sincerity. I'm not here to get something from you, Claire. I'm here to give you something. Support. Friendship. Belief. Whatever you need. And if all you ever need is a friend, then I'll be the best friend you've ever had. Family. That's what real love sounds like. Not demands, not pressure. Not I deserve you because I've been nice to you. Just I love you, and that's enough for me. Even if you never love me back. That kind of love is rare. That kind of love heals. But before Claire could even begin to process her feelings for Carter, before she could start to think about what it might mean to let herself love again, her body gave out. 3 weeks after Carter's confession, Claire and Carter were sitting in her tiny apartment watching a movie. It was a comedy, something mindless and funny that didn't require much thought. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past weeks. Carter would come by after work, bring dinner, and they'd eat and talk and sometimes just exist in comfortable silence. Claire hadn't given him an answer about his feelings, hadn't said whether she could ever love him back, and Carter hadn't pushed, had just kept showing up, kept being present, kept proving that his love wasn't conditional on her reciprocation. The movie was halfway through when Claire stood up to get water from the kitchen. She'd taken 2 steps when the room tilted. Everything spun violently to the left. The floor seemed to rise up to meet her. Claire? Carter's voice sounded far away, like he was calling to her from the end of a long tunnel. She tried to answer, tried to say his name, but the words wouldn't come. The world was spinning too fast. Her legs gave out. And then everything went black. Carter had caught her before she hit the ground, had lowered her gently to the floor, his hands shaking as he checked for a pulse. Claire, wake up. Please wake up. She didn't respond. Her skin was pale, almost gray, her breathing shallow. Carter had pulled out his phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. I need an ambulance. My friend collapsed. She's breathing but unconscious. Please hurry. The paramedics had arrived within 7 minutes. They'd taken her vitals, asked Carter questions he could barely answer through his panic. Is she on any medications? Any history of medical conditions? Has she been sick recently? I don't know. She lost a baby a few months ago. She's been under a lot of stress. I don't know. They'd loaded her into the ambulance. Carter had ridden with her, holding her hand, watching her pale face, begging her silently to wake up, to be okay, to not leave him when he'd just found her. At the hospital, they'd taken her back immediately. Carter had been left in the waiting room, pacing the length of it over and over, checking his phone every 30 seconds, even though he knew no time had passed. 2 hours felt like 2 years. Every minute that passed without news felt like a small death. Finally, a doctor had emerged from the double doors. Are you family? Carter had hesitated. What was he? A friend? More than a friend? Someone who loved her desperately but had no legal right to information about her care? I'm the closest thing she has right now. The doctor had studied him for a moment, then nodded. Ms. Morrison is stable, but we found something concerning in her blood work. What? Carter's heart had stopped. Heavy metal poisoning. Arsenic, specifically. The world had tilted. Carter had grabbed the wall to steady himself. What did you say? Someone's been poisoning her. The doctor's voice had been gentle but firm. Based on the levels in her system, we're talking months of exposure. Possibly longer. It's what caused her to collapse. Her body is shutting down trying to process the toxins. Carter had felt rage unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Cold, focused, deadly rage. Can you save her? Yes. We've started chelation therapy to remove the arsenic from her system. She'll need ongoing treatment, but she should make a full recovery. Can I see her? The doctor had led him to her room. Claire had been awake, lying in the hospital bed looking small and fragile, an IV in her arm pumping medication into her system. Carter, her voice had been barely a whisper. He'd gone to her side immediately, taken her hand carefully like she might break. I'm here. You're going to be okay. The doctor said poisoning. Yes, and Carter had watched realization dawn on Claire's face, had watched her piece it together. The tea, the vitamins, the skincare products, all from Vanessa. The constant sickness during pregnancy, the miscarriage. The weakness that had never fully gone away even after the divorce. All from Vanessa. Oh my God. Claire's whisper had been broken, devastated. She killed my baby. Carter had held her while she cried, had felt his own tears fall, had felt the full weight of betrayal settle over both of them. 13 years of friendship. All of it a lie. All of it leading to this. Murder disguised as love. Tell me everything. Carter's voice had been quiet but intense when Claire's tears had finally slowed. Every gift she gave you. Every time you felt sick. Everything. Why? Because I'm going to get proof. Carter had met her eyes. And then, I'm going to make sure she pays for what she did to you. He'd hired Thomas Reed the next day. Former FBI, the best private investigator in the city, with connections that ran deep and wide. Carter had walked into Reed's office with a check and a mission. I want to know everything about Vanessa Hartford. Carter had slid an envelope across the desk. Every purchase, every text, every moment. Find me proof of what she did. What exactly are we looking for? Attempted murder through poisoning. I need evidence that will hold up in court. Reed had nodded slowly. Give me 6 weeks. Those 6 weeks had been the hardest of Claire's life. She'd gone through chelation therapy 3 times a week, long sessions hooked up to IVs that pulled the arsenic from her blood. The side effects had been brutal. Nausea worse than anything she'd experienced during the pregnancy. Headaches that felt like her skull was splitting. Exhaustion so complete she could barely get out of bed. But slowly, she'd gotten stronger. Her hair had stopped falling out. Color had returned to her face. The fog in her mind had lifted. She'd started to feel like herself again, like she was waking up from a nightmare that had lasted months. And through it all, Carter had been there. He'd taken time off work to drive her to treatments, had sat with her during the long 4 sessions, reading aloud from books she loved, had brought her real food when she could finally eat again, had held her hair when the nausea got bad, and held her hand when the fear got worse. He'd never pressured her for more than friendship, never brought up his confession, never made her feel like she owed him anything for his care. He just showed up day after day, proving that his love wasn't conditional on her reciprocation. And Claire had found herself falling, not because Carter was rescuing her. She was rescuing herself, fighting through the poison and the betrayal and the grief to find herself again. But because he was walking beside her while she did it, because he saw her at her weakest and didn't look away, because his love asked for nothing and gave everything. One night, 6 weeks into her recovery, Claire had been sitting on her couch with Carter beside her. They'd just finished dinner, and he was about to leave, and she'd looked at him and felt something shift inside her chest. I need to tell you something. Okay? Carter had turned to face her, patient as always. I'm falling in love with you. The words had come out in a rush. I don't know if that's real, or if it's just gratitude or trauma bonding, or if I'm just confused because you've been so kind to me. But when I think about my future, you're in it. And when you're not here, I miss you. And I need you to know that. Carter had crossed the space between them and taken her hands. Claire, stop. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to use you. I don't want to. Look at me. He'd waited until she met his eyes. Whatever you're feeling is real. Trauma doesn't create love. It reveals it. And if you're falling for me, I'm going to catch you. But only if you're ready. Only if it's what you really want. I'm scared. She'd whispered it. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Claire had kissed him then, soft and tentative and full of hope. And Carter had kissed her back like she was oxygen, like she was everything he'd been waiting for, like 3 years of silent love had led to this moment. But their fragile beginning was about to be interrupted. Because Thomas Reed had found the proof. 6 weeks after Carter had hired him, Reed had walked into Carter's office with a file folder that would destroy Vanessa's entire world. Carter had called Claire immediately. She'd met them at Carter's apartment, nervous and hopeful and terrified all at once. The evidence was devastating. Reed had spread it across Carter's coffee table like pieces of a puzzle that formed a picture of evil. Bank records showing Vanessa had purchased arsenic trioxide from an underground supplier 3 months before Claire's wedding. For pest control, she'd claimed on the purchase order. The timing was perfect, right when she would have been planning her long game. Security footage from Claire and Eric's building showing Vanessa entering their penthouse multiple times when Claire was out, using the key she'd been given for emergencies. The timestamps on the footage matched days when Claire had felt particularly sick, days when Vanessa must have been adding poison to food or drinks or personal care products. Text messages to an unknown number sent from a burner phone registered under a fake name but traced back to Vanessa through her credit card purchase. She's getting weaker. Soon. The miscarriage worked perfectly. He's starting to believe me about the affair. Each message was a nail in her coffin. Each one proof of premeditation, of calculation, of malice. But the final piece was the tea itself. Claire had kept the tin. That beautiful Moroccan design she couldn't bring herself to throw away despite everything. She'd brought it to Reed, and he'd had it tested at 3 different labs. All 3 had come back positive for arsenic. Levels high enough to cause the symptoms Claire had experienced, high enough to cause a miscarriage, high enough to kill, given enough time. This is it. Carter's voice had been quiet as they looked at the evidence. Proof of everything she did. Claire had stared at the documents spread across the table. Medical reports detailing her suffering. Lab results showing poison in the tea she drank every day. Security footage of Vanessa moving through her home like she owned it. Text messages proving that every moment of friendship had been a performance covering murder. What do we do with this? Her voice had been hollow. Carter had looked at her. That's your choice. We can go to the police. We can sue her. We can expose her publicly. Or we can do nothing and let karma handle it. Claire had been quiet for a long time. Then she'd met Carter's eyes. I want justice, not revenge. I want her to face legal consequences for what she did, but I also want Eric to know the truth. Are you sure? He didn't believe you before. He needs to know. Claire's voice had been certain, not for me, for himself, because right now he's building a life with a woman who poisoned his wife and killed his child. He deserves to know what he's sleeping beside. Carter had nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. He'd gathered the files. I'll go to him first. Show him the evidence. Give him a chance to do the right thing and call the police himself. And if he doesn't, then I'll do it for him. Carter had walked into Eric's office the next day, carrying a file that would destroy everything. Eric had looked up from his computer, surprised. They hadn't spoken since Carter had sold his shares in the company and walked away 2 months earlier. Carter. What are you doing here? I need you to look at something. I don't have time for... Vanessa poisoned Claire. The room had gone silent. The hum of Eric's computer. The distant sound of traffic outside. Everything else had stopped. Eric's face had twisted. Get out. I'm not listening to... Bank records showing Vanessa purchased arsenic. Carter had dropped the file on the desk with a heavy thud. Lab results proving Claire's tea was contaminated. Security footage of Vanessa entering your home when Claire wasn't there. Medical reports confirming Claire had heavy metal poisoning, the same poison that caused her miscarriage. That's insane. Text messages from Vanessa to an unknown number documenting her plan. Carter had opened the file, pointed to the printed messages. She's getting weaker. Soon. The miscarriage worked perfectly. Ring any bells? Eric had gone pale. His hands had started to shake as he reached for the file. Carter had watched his former friend Reed, had watched the moment truth hit home, had watched Eric's face crumble as he understood what he'd done, what he'd believed, what he'd destroyed. Oh God. Eric's whisper had been broken. The baby, our baby, was killed by the woman you're currently sleeping with. Carter's voice had been hard as stone. The woman you believed over your wife. The woman you threw Claire away for. Eric's hands had covered his face. What have I done? You believed a liar over the woman who loved you. You threw out someone good because someone evil was more convincing. I need to call Claire. Eric had reached for his phone. I need to apologize. I need to... She doesn't want to hear from you. Carter, please. I made a mistake. I need to make this right. What you need to do is call the police. Carter had leaned forward. Vanessa committed attempted murder. She killed your child. Your and Claire's child. Are you going to let her get away with that? Eric had stared at the evidence for a long moment. Lab results showing arsenic levels that should have killed Claire. Medical reports detailing months of suffering. Security footage of Vanessa moving through their home with a key she'd been trusted with. Text messages proving premeditation, proving calculation, proving evil. She's pregnant. Eric's voice had been quiet. Vanessa is pregnant. 4 months. Carter had felt sick. With your child? I thought so. But now, Eric had looked at the evidence again, at the proof that everything Vanessa had told him was a lie. How do I know she didn't poison me too? How do I know anything she's told me is true? You don't. That's what happens when you build a life with someone who lies as easily as breathing. Eric had been crying now, tears falling onto the papers documenting his wife's near murder. I loved Claire. I really did love her. Then prove it. Call the police. Eric had stared at his phone for a long moment. His hand had shaken as he picked it up. And then, slowly, he'd dialed 911. The arrest had happened at the penthouse, the same penthouse where Claire had signed divorce papers 2 months earlier. Vanessa had been 4 months pregnant, glowing with victory, planning the nursery that would be in the room that had been meant for Claire's baby. She'd opened the door with a smile, expecting Eric. The smile had faltered when she'd seen the police officers standing behind him. Eric? What's going on? Vanessa Hartford, you're under arrest for attempted murder and assault causing bodily harm. The officer's words had hit her like a physical blow. Her face had gone from confusion to shock to panic in seconds. What? Her voice had risen to a shriek. Eric, tell them this is crazy. I know what you did. Eric's voice had been dead, emotionless. I know about the poison, the tea, the vitamins, all of it. Vanessa's face had gone white, then red. You can't prove anything. Bank records. Eric's hands had shaken as he spoke. Security footage, lab results, text messages. We can prove everything. The officer had moved to cuff her, and that's when Vanessa had exploded. She had everything. The scream had echoed through the marble halls, raw and primal, and full of years of poisonous envy finally unleashed. Vanessa had fought against the officers holding her, wild with rage and something that looked like madness. The perfect husband, the money, the penthouse, the life. She didn't deserve it. Vanessa's voice had cracked with tears and fury. I was smarter. I was prettier. I worked harder. Why did she get you? Why did perfect little Claire with her sweet smile and her kind heart get everything when I got nothing? Eric had stepped back, horror written across his face. He'd been looking at a stranger, a monster wearing the face of someone he'd thought he loved. I loved you first. Vanessa had been sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks. Since high school. Before her. But you only saw her. Perfect Claire who had everything handed to her while I had to fight for scraps. You poisoned her. Eric's whisper had cut through her rant. You killed our baby. Vanessa's laugh had been sharp and broken. That baby was mine to have. Not hers, mine. She got the husband and the penthouse and the perfect life, and I had to earn it. Had to scheme. Had to make her weak so you'd finally see me. The officers had begun dragging her toward the door. She'd fought every step, still screaming, still spewing the poison that had lived in her heart for over a decade. I earned this. I took what should have been mine, and I'd do it again. She deserved to lose everything. She deserved to suffer. Her voice had echoed down the hallway even as the elevator doors closed. Not one word of remorse. Not one hint of guilt. Only rage that she'd been caught. Only bitterness that she'd lost. And Eric had stood alone in the doorway of his penthouse and realized he'd welcomed a murderer into his life, into his bed, into his future. The child Vanessa was carrying, was it even his? Or was that another lie in a relationship built entirely on deception? He'd destroyed his marriage for a woman who'd murdered his real child. He'd thrown away a wife who'd loved him for a friend who'd poisoned her. And now he had nothing but regret and consequences. Family, this is what I need you to understand about betrayal. The people who betray you don't do it in a moment of weakness. They do it through calculated choices, day after day, smile after smile, lie after lie. Vanessa didn't accidentally poison Claire. She planned it, bought the arsenic, mixed it into tea, delivered it with love. She didn't accidentally seduce Eric. She targeted him when he was vulnerable, manipulated him with lies, destroyed his marriage with strategy. Evil isn't usually dramatic. It's usually patient. And consequences, when they finally come, are permanent. The letters had started arriving a week after Vanessa's arrest. Long, desperate letters from Eric to Claire. "I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I believed lies about you and threw away the best thing in my life. Please, can we talk? Can I explain? Can I try to make this right?" Flowers arrived every single day. White peonies, her favorite, though Eric had never remembered that when they were married. Gifts Claire didn't open. Apologies written and rewritten, explaining and begging and pleading. Claire had read the first letter. Then she'd handed the rest to Carter unopened. Throw them away. Her voice had been quiet but certain. Carter had done it without judgment, without comment. He'd held her when she cried, not for Eric, but for the friendship she'd lost. For the girl Vanessa had once been, or maybe had never been at all. "She was my best friend," Claire had whispered one night, tears soaking Carter's shirt. "Since we were 15. How did I not see? Because you loved her." Carter's arms had been tight around her. "And love makes us trust. I should have seen the signs. Family, let me stop right here, because some of you are thinking the same thing, that Claire should have known, that the signs were obvious. But here's what I need you to understand. When you love people, really love them, you interpret their actions through the lens of that love. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You believe the explanations they give you. Claire wasn't stupid. She was trusting. And there's a difference. Trust is what allows us to build relationships. Without it, we're just isolated individuals protecting ourselves from connection. But trust also makes us vulnerable. And some people see that vulnerability as opportunity. Don't blame yourself for being betrayed. Blame the person who chose to betray you. If you've ever blamed yourself for not seeing betrayal coming, comment right now. Tell me you're releasing that guilt, because it was never yours to carry. After 3 months, the letters from Eric stopped. He'd finally understood that Claire was gone, not just physically but emotionally. She'd closed that chapter of her life and wasn't going back. But Claire wasn't just gone from Eric's life. She was building something new. It had started with a conversation one evening. Carter had come over for dinner, a regular occurrence now as their relationship had deepened from friendship into something more. Claire had been sketching on scraps of paper when Carter had noticed. "What are these?" She'd tried to hide them, embarrassed. "Nothing. Just, I used to want to design clothes. Before Eric told you it was a cute hobby that you didn't need to pursue because you didn't need to work." Carter's voice had been tight with old anger. "Because I was there, at that dinner party when you mentioned fashion school, and he laughed and said you should focus on charity work instead. I thought then that he was a fool. It was just a dream. Show me more." She had dozens of designs hidden in notebooks and on loose papers. Elegant pieces with an edge of something fierce. Clothes for women who'd survived something, who'd rebuilt, who'd risen. Each design told a story of strength wrapped in beauty. "These are incredible." Carter had been studying each sketch with genuine attention. What would it take to make this real? Money. Investors. People who believe in an unknown designer with scandal attached to her name. "What if I invested?" Claire had laughed. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because you've already done too much. I can't take your money. It's not charity, Claire. It's an investment in talent I believe in." Carter had leaned forward. "Let me help you build something." Claire had wanted to say no. Independence felt safer than owing anyone. But Carter's eyes had held something she recognized now. Not pity, not obligation, belief, real, genuine belief in her. "What would the terms be?" "Whatever you want them to be. You have full creative control. I'm a silent partner. You pay me back from profits if and when you can. That's a terrible business arrangement." Carter had smiled. "Good thing I'm not doing this for business reasons. They'd shaken on it. Within 3 months, Claire had found a space, a small, renovated building, in Brooklyn with enough room for a boutique and a studio workspace. She'd hired 2 seamstresses and a pattern maker. She'd designed her first collection, 20 pieces, each one telling a story of survival and strength. She'd named her brand Morrison Designs, her maiden name. Identity reclaimed. The launch had been small, a boutique showing in her Brooklyn studio, 50 guests, mostly Carter's contacts, a few fashion bloggers, some local boutique owners. Claire had been terrified, standing in the back of the studio, watching people arrive. Carter had found her hiding in the workroom. "You ready? I'm going to fail. Nobody's going to like these. I'm going to embarrass myself and lose your money and—" He'd taken her hands. "Claire, you're extraordinary. Your designs are extraordinary. And in about 5 minutes, everyone out there is going to see what I've been seeing all along." The first model had walked out in Claire's design, a structured blazer with soft feminine details, power and grace combined. The room had gone quiet. Then someone had started clapping. Then everyone was clapping. By the end of the night, Claire had orders from 3 boutiques and features confirmed in 2 fashion blogs. "Local designer Claire Morrison debuts stunning collection," the headlines had read. "Morrison Designs, fashion for women who've survived and thrived." The brand had grown slowly at first, then faster. Women had connected with the story, the designer who'd lost everything and built it back through talent and determination. They'd connected with the clothes, beautiful and wearable, with an edge that said, "I've been through hell and I'm still standing." Within 6 months, Morrison Designs had expanded to online sales. Within a year, Claire had opened a second location. And through it all, Carter had been there, not as an investor demanding returns, but as a partner who believed, who celebrated every win and shouldered every setback. Somewhere between the late nights reviewing fabric samples and the champagne toasts, when major boutique orders came through, their relationship had deepened. It wasn't dramatic, no grand gesture, just Carter's hand on her back as they reviewed business proposals, and Claire leaning into his touch, his eyes meeting hers across a table of designs, and both of them seeing the same future. "I need to tell you something," Claire had said one night in her design studio, surrounded by fabric and sketches and the life they'd built together. Carter had looked up from the order forms he'd been reviewing. "What's up? I don't want slow anymore. I don't want careful. I want real. I want you, all of you. I'm ready." Carter had crossed the studio in 3 strides and kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life for permission. And maybe he had been. 1 year after the divorce, Carter had proposed, not on a beach or at a fancy restaurant, in Claire's design studio, surrounded by fabric and sketches and the life they'd built together. "Marry me," he'd said it simply, holding out a ring that was beautiful and perfect and so completely Claire. "Not because you need me or I saved you or any of that, but because I love you and you love me, and we're better together than apart." The ring had been simple, elegant, reflecting Claire's aesthetic, thoughtful, chosen with care. Yes, Claire's answer had come through tears and laughter. Yes, 1,000 times yes. 6 weeks after the engagement, Claire had been late. She hadn't told Carter, couldn't bear to see hope in his eyes only to crush it when the test came back negative. The poison had damaged her system. The doctors had said pregnancy might be difficult, might be impossible. She'd made peace with that, had told Carter early in their relationship that she might not be able to give him biological children, and he'd said the same thing he always said. "I want you. Everything else we'll figure out." But now, staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests in the bathroom of her design studio, Claire hadn't been sure what she felt. Joy, terror, disbelief. Was this real? Or would the poison take this baby too? That night, she'd found Carter in his home office, reviewing investor reports for her expanding fashion line. She couldn't speak, had just walked in and handed him the test with trembling hands. He'd stared at it, looked up at her, eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Is this?" She'd nodded, tears falling. "We're pregnant." He'd whispered it like a prayer. Carter had shot up from his chair, wrapped her in his arms, lifted her gently, held her like she was made of glass and miracles. "We're having a baby." We're really having a baby." They'd both cried, both laughed, both held each other like they might fall apart if they let go. Because after everything, the poison, the betrayal, the loss, this was impossible. This was grace. The pregnancy had been carefully monitored. Claire had seen her doctor weekly, had blood tests to make sure the arsenic was completely gone from her system, had taken every precaution, and slowly, the baby had grown. Claire's belly had expanded. The morning sickness had come and gone, normal this time, without the sinister edge of poison. The ultrasounds had shown a healthy, thriving child. At 20 weeks, they'd found out they were having a boy. Carter had cried in the ultrasound room, staring at the screen showing his son. "He's perfect. You're perfect. We're having a family. We already are a family. This just makes us bigger." The wedding had happened when Claire was 6 months pregnant. Small and intimate, just close friends and family in a garden ceremony that Claire had designed herself. She'd worn a custom gown from her own collection, ivory silk with hand-embroidered details designed to flow over her growing belly. Carter had cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, had taken her hands and spoken vows that made everyone cry. "You gave me everything I didn't know I needed." His voice had been steady despite the tears on his face. "You taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated. That real love shows up every day and chooses you over and over. I promise to keep choosing you, in sickness and health, in success and failure, in joy and sorrow. I promise to see you, to hear you, to honor you, for as long as we both live." Claire's vows had been just as simple, just as true. "You loved me when I was broken. You stood beside me while I healed. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You never asked for anything except to be allowed to love me. That's the greatest gift I've ever received. I promise to love you the way you've loved me, completely, honestly, without conditions. I promise to choose you every single day, forever." When they'd kissed, their guests had erupted in applause and tears. The reception had flowed into evening. Claire had helped cater it herself with friends, a celebration of food and love and new beginnings. The photos had made 3 magazines. Fashion mogul Claire Morrison weds tech entrepreneur Carter Hayes in intimate garden ceremony. From scandal to success, how Claire Morrison built an empire after betrayal. The photos had been beautiful. Claire and Carter's first dance, the way he'd looked at her like she'd hung the stars, the joy on both their faces, uncomplicated by anything but love. And in a women's correctional facility 2 hours away, an inmate had shown Vanessa Hartford one of those magazines. Vanessa had stared at the photo of Claire, pregnant, successful, happy, married to a man who clearly adored her, and felt the rage that had defined her entire life consume her once again. Even now, even from prison, Claire still won. "Family, let me tell you what happened to Vanessa. She'd been sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder. The evidence had been overwhelming. The bank records, the security footage, the poison tea, the text messages. Her lawyer had tried to argue temporary insanity, had tried to paint her as a woman driven mad by unrequited love. The jury hadn't bought it. The premeditation was too clear, the calculation too obvious. The baby she'd been carrying had been born in prison. A boy. DNA tests had confirmed Eric was the father. Eric had taken custody, was raising his son alone while the boy's mother served her sentence. But he'd moved out of the penthouse, had downsized to a modest apartment. His company had collapsed after the scandal. Business partners had pulled out. Investors had fled. Clients had left for competitors who didn't have attempted murder attached to their CEO's name. The man who'd thrown his wife away for an affair now lived in the ruins of his own. Choices, raising a child alone while trying to rebuild a career from nothing. He'd tried to reach out to Claire one last time. 6 months after her wedding, he'd sent a letter. "Claire, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed the best thing in my life. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm raising my son and trying to be a better man than I was. I hope you're happy. I hope you found everything you deserved. I'm sorry I wasn't the one to give it to you." Claire had read it once, then put it away. She hadn't responded, hadn't needed to. Eric was her past. Carter was her future. 3 years after the divorce, Claire stood in her flagship store in Manhattan, the third location for Morrison Designs, watching customers browse her latest collection. Her brand had exploded. Features in Vogue and Elle. Celebrity clients wearing her designs on red carpets. International shipping to 20 countries. A waiting list for custom pieces that stretched 6 months. She'd built an empire from nothing, from ashes. Her son, 3-year-old James, played in the corner with the store manager's daughter, laughing and building block towers, healthy and happy and loved. Carter came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, kissed her neck. Ready to go home? Their home was a brownstone in Brooklyn, modest compared to the penthouse she'd lost, but filled with love and laughter and the life they'd built together. Real life. Meaningful life. Ready. As they walked out into the city sunset, James between them holding both their hands, Claire thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago. The one who'd signed divorce papers in a marble kitchen, believing her life was over. The one who'd been poisoned by her best friend and abandoned by her husband. The one who'd lost everything. She'd lost everything that day. Her marriage, her home, her health, her baby, her best friend. And in losing it, she'd found herself. Found Carter. Found her passion. Found her strength. Found her purpose. Everything she'd lost, she'd built back better. Not through revenge, through grace. Through dignity. Through choosing to rise instead of staying broken. Family, this is what I need you to understand. Betrayal will come. People you trust will disappoint you. Some will even try to destroy you, but you get to choose what happens next. You can choose revenge and stay chained to your pain forever. Or you can choose to build something so beautiful that betrayal becomes irrelevant. Claire chose building, and look what she built. A business. A marriage, a family, a life that mattered. Eric chose betrayal and lost everything. Company collapsed, reputation ruined, raising son alone, living with consequences, permanent losses. Vanessa chose poison and destroyed herself. 15 years in prison, lost freedom, lost everything. Son being raised by father, sees Claire's success from a cell. Consequences permanent. Now family, if this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end, it's the beginning. Comment where you're watching from, or just type, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because I'm with you too. Every person watching this who's been betrayed, who's been broken, who's had to rebuild from nothing, I see you. I believe in you. This isn't just Claire's story. It's a blueprint for survival, for rising, for becoming unstoppable. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm going to keep bringing you stories about people who refuse to let betrayal define them. Stories about second chances and sacred love, and the difference between those who take and those who give. May you have Claire's strength when betrayal comes. May you find your Carter when you're ready to heal. May you recognize poison before it destroys you. May you know when to walk away from what breaks you. May you build beauty from ashes. And may you always, always choose people who choose you back. If you're in the middle of betrayal right now, if someone you trust is destroying you, hear me. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Get out. The pain you feel leaving will be less than the pain of staying. If you're healing from betrayal, if you're in your studio apartment counting dollars and wondering if it gets better, it does. Claire is proof. Keep going. Your Carter is coming. Your empire is being built. One day at a time. If you're on the other side, if you've built your life back, if you found your person and your purpose, share your story. Someone needs to know it's possible. Someone needs your hope. And if you're the Carter in someone's life, if you're loving someone silently, supporting someone through their healing, being patient while they learn to trust again, you're sacred. Keep showing up. Real love always wins. Vanessa tried to poison Claire's body, steal her husband, destroy her life. And where are they now? Vanessa, in prison, bitter, alone, watching through bars as the woman she tried to destroy builds an empire. Eric, single father, failed business, permanent regret, living with the consequences of believing lies over truth. Claire, fashion empire, loving husband, beautiful son, life of purpose, surrounded by people who choose her every single day. That's not revenge. That's consequences. That's karma. That's grace. The best revenge is a life well lived. Claire didn't destroy Vanessa. She didn't have to. She just built something so beautiful, so successful, so full of love and meaning that Vanessa's poison became irrelevant. That's power, family, real power. Until next time, keep building beauty from ashes. Keep choosing people who choose you. Keep rising. I'm with you. This is Mr. Hearthline Stories. May the Almighty protect you from those who smile while mixing poison into your tea. May your discernment be sharper than any deception. May you recognize the difference between those who love you and those who envy you. May you find the strength to rise when betrayal tries to bury you. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story of rising from betrayal. Let's build a community of people who refuse to stay broken. And remember, consequences are real. Choices matter. Truth always comes to light. Poison eventually destroys the wielder. But grace builds empires. Amen.